The music was low, the lights dim, and the smell of expensive perfume hung in the air like a whispered promise. It was one of those rooftop lounges in the middle of the city, exclusive enough to be impressive, but not so loud that you couldn't hear someone say your name in a soft, seductive tone. That's when she appeared. Not in some over-the-top, cinematic way. She didn't strut in like a model on a runway. No. She simply was. She existed in a way that bent the attention of every man around her. It wasn't her dress, though it fit like it was sewn onto her. It wasn't even her looks, though she was stunning in a way that made you blink twice. It was her presence. Calm, controlled, calculated. And yet, she smiled like innocence wrapped in lipstick. Ethan had been watching from a distance, nursing his drink and his cynicism. Years of disappointment had dulled his appetite for chasing, but something about her tugged at an older version of himself, the version that believed in romance, connection, that spark that writers and movies swore was real. She walked past every man like they were shadows and stopped right in front of him. Is this seat taken? And just like that, the illusion began. They talked for hours. She laughed at his jokes, even the subtle ones most people missed. She asked about his goals, his childhood, his dreams, and listened. Not the fake, nodding along kind of listening. Real attention. Focused. It was intoxicating. For the first time in years, Ethan let his guard down. Over the next few weeks, she became everything. Soft touches. Lingering glances. Encouraging words. She seemed to reflect his soul back to him, like she understood. And he thought, this is what I've been waiting for. What he didn't realize was that she wasn't reflecting him, she was mirroring him. She studied his body language, picked up on his vulnerabilities, echoed back his values. It felt like love, but it was strategy. And the strategy was working. One night, after they had gone out and wandered the city, she stood on his balcony barefoot, sipping wine, wrapped in his hoodie. She looked up at the stars, then at him, and said softly, "You make me feel safe." Ethan's heart clenched. For a man, that's the trap. Those 5 words hit like a vow. Safe? That was his purpose. His masculine instinct locked in. Provide. Protect. Serve. From that moment, he stopped thinking critically. He stopped asking questions. He started giving. Time. Energy. Resources. Attention. She smiled more. Touched more. Needed more. And he gave it all. But there were signs. Small ones at first. She started replying slower to messages. She'd mention other men casually. "Oh, my trainer said this," or "My coworker and I were laughing about that." He felt a flicker of discomfort, but he ignored it. He didn't want to seem insecure. She was busy more often. Tired more often. Less affectionate. But every time he asked if something was wrong, she'd smile, kiss him, and say, "Baby, don't be silly. I'm just stressed." And he believed it. Because when you want the illusion to be real, you will protect it, even from yourself. Weeks later, they had dinner with some of her friends. Ethan noticed the way she behaved, slightly different. Louder. More flirtatious. Laughing too hard at one guy's jokes. And when they got home, she was distant. Cold. He asked, gently, "Is something going on?" She rolled her eyes. "Why are you being like this? You're acting insecure. I can't have friends now." And that was the moment something inside Ethan shifted. He didn't explode. He didn't accuse. He simply nodded. Quiet. Processing. Because the most dangerous thing a man can do is start to notice. From that night on, Ethan saw the shift. He didn't say much, but he started studying her the way she once studied him. He noticed how her affection always followed a compliment. How her mood improved right after he did her a favor. How she needed reassurance not because she was anxious, but because it kept him hooked. It wasn't love. It was maintenance. And he was the one doing all the work. One evening, she forgot her phone on the couch. A message popped up from someone named Jay. Ethan wasn't the snooping type, but curiosity got the better of him. "Jay, last night was amazing. When can we do it again?" Ethan stared at the screen. Then at the closed bathroom door where she was brushing her teeth, humming a soft tune like everything was perfect. His chest didn't explode with rage. It caved in with clarity. He realized it wasn't just betrayal, it was orchestration. A game. A performance. And he had paid for front row seats. He didn't confront her that night. He didn't scream or throw anything. He just watched her sleep beside him, peaceful, like someone who had nothing to lose and everything to gain. That's when he understood. She was never his. She was just playing a role. And when the role no longer served her, she would exit, clean, guiltless, and on to the next. But not this time. This time, he would write the ending. Ethan didn't sleep that night. He lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathe softly beside him, her arm draped over his chest like she still belonged there. But the message from Jay echoed louder in his mind than any snore or siren outside the window. Last night was amazing. When can we do it again? The words repeated like a bell tolling the death of something sacred. But oddly enough, Ethan felt calm, numb, but focused. Like a man who just woke up inside a burning house, past panic, ready for action. She stirred in her sleep, murmured something sweet, and nestled closer to him like she still had that power. And that's when he made the quiet decision. She would never have that power again. The next morning, nothing seemed different. She stretched, smiled, kissed him on the neck, asked about coffee. Her behavior was perfectly normal, as if she hadn't just emotionally detonated the illusion he'd been living in for months. And that's what chilled Ethan to the core. It wasn't an accident. This wasn't a slip-up, a moment of weakness, or a mistake she regretted. It was routine. Smooth. Practiced. The duplicity didn't shake her because this was who she was. But now Ethan was watching. And every gesture she made seemed to echo with hidden intent. She sat on the couch and scrolled through her phone like it was a lifeline to the world that excited her more than the man sitting 10 feet away. Her attention no longer rested on him, it flickered outward, toward her social validation, her next emotional hit. Ethan realized he was just the foundation. The fallback. The stable guy. The emotional sponge. The provider of resources, comfort, attention, safety, while she chased thrill elsewhere. That evening, she suggested a weekend trip. Some coastal town with a vineyard and spa. Ethan knew why: relationship CPR. When women feel a man slipping, they often pull him closer not out of love, but to keep the leash tight. He smiled, nodded, and played along. But internally, he was detaching. Fast. He remembered a quote he'd once read by Schopenhauer. A man can be himself only so long as he is alone. If he does not love solitude, he will not love freedom. Ethan hadn't understood it then. Now it made perfect sense. She wasn't afraid of losing him. She was afraid of losing control over him. Over the next few days, Ethan quietly observed her entire pattern. Her compliments were transactional. Her attention was selective. Her affection? Conditional. He also noticed she never apologized first. Never admitted fault. Never asked how he felt unless it related to her. This wasn't a relationship. It was a negotiation. And the currency was his self-worth. One night, he brought up Jay. Casually. No anger. Just, "Hey, by the way, who's Jay?" Her face shifted in micro-expressions. Not guilt, calculation. She ran a silent diagnostic. What does he know? What can I admit without losing leverage? She laughed. Oh, just a friend. You're not jealous, are you? Classic. Turn the question back. Frame it like he's insecure. He smiled politely and didn't press. That's when she started to panic. Not openly. But it was there. Her tone changed. She became warmer, more affectionate. She cooked dinner the next night. Wore lingerie. Left a little note on his pillow, "You mean everything to me." Textbook manipulation. But Ethan had unplugged from the matrix. He no longer chased her validation because he finally understood. It was never real. Her love was a mask, a costume she wore when it served her. And once a man understands that, it changes everything. He doesn't hate her. He doesn't rage. He just lets go. Not because she's evil, but because he sees her clearly, for the first time. Ethan began to rebuild himself. Quietly. He started hitting the gym again, not to impress her, but to reforge himself. He reconnected with old friends. He picked up books, not distractions. He stopped reacting. He started watching. She noticed. And just like that, the power shifted. Suddenly she was the one wondering, why is he distant? Why doesn't he text back right away? Why does he seem stronger? Because he was. She had unknowingly done the one thing that would free him. She revealed herself. On a Saturday morning, while she was getting ready to go out, she turned and asked, "You still love me, right?" He looked at her, steady and unblinking, and said, "I don't know who you are." She froze. Because that wasn't an insult. It was the truth. The person she had presented, the girl who loved his mind, needed his strength, saw his soul, had never existed. It was a role she played. And now that the curtain had dropped, he saw the actress underneath. But he no longer wanted to applaud. That evening, he packed a small bag. Nothing dramatic. No storming out. Just clean detachment. When she asked where he was going, he replied, "To remember who I was before I met who you pretended to be." He didn't block her. He didn't beg for closure. He just left. And for the first time in months, he felt peace. Not because he had won, but because he had awakened. Ethan drove for hours that night, no destination, just motion. The city lights faded into silence. Concrete turned into trees. Roads narrowed. The noise quieted. For the first time in months, his phone didn't buzz. No anxious check-ins. No emotional bait texts. No need to explain anything. He was alone. And it felt like peace. He stopped at a roadside motel, nothing fancy, just a place to breathe. There was no alcohol, no music, no impulsive scrolling through old photos. He wasn't nostalgic. He was done. That night, Ethan stared at his reflection in the mirror, shirtless, tired, eyes deeper than before. He whispered, "You're back." Not back to who he was before her. Back to who he was meant to become. The next few days were silence. She didn't call. She didn't text. Maybe it was pride. Or maybe her mask had finally slipped for good, and she didn't know how to wear it again. Either way, it didn't matter. Because Ethan had no desire to go back. Not because he hated her, but because he loved his clarity more than her confusion. Brain Schopenhauer's Shadow. He picked up a book he'd abandoned long ago, Arthur Schopenhauer's The World as Will and Representation. Heavy stuff. But now, the words made sense. Love is a trap nature uses to achieve reproduction. That used to sound cold. Now it sounded honest. Ethan realized he had fallen in love with a version of her that never truly existed. She played that version until she no longer needed to. And yet, her actions weren't evil. They were instinctual. She didn't destroy him out of cruelty. She simply followed her nature. That was the hardest truth to accept, and the most liberating. Women do not betray you. They reveal themselves. Once he accepted that, the pain stopped. Ethan began building again. He woke up early. Cold showers. Gym. Long walks without headphones. Silence wasn't empty anymore, it was sharp. Focused. He read Stoicism. Not to armor his heart, but to understand it. He didn't chase pleasure. He pursued discipline. He stopped needing attention. He gave himself purpose. And slowly, people noticed. She comes back. It always happens. Weeks later, the message came. "Hey stranger. I miss you. Can we talk?" Classic. No apology. No accountability. Just bait. He didn't respond. A few days later, a longer message. "I know I messed up. I was scared. I pushed you away. But I never stopped loving you. I still think about our mornings. The way you held me. You were the only one who really understood me." Ethan looked at the screen. He felt nothing. Not hate. Not anger. Just distance. That chapter was closed. Not because she wasn't beautiful. Not because the sex wasn't amazing. Not because the memories weren't real. But because he was no longer a man who needed a fantasy. She called one night. He answered. Calm. Firm. Present. She started crying. Talking about how lonely she'd been. How lost. How no one measured up to him. And Ethan just listened. And when she paused, hoping for a crack in his armor, he simply said, "I forgive you." Long silence. Then, "But I don't want you back." And that broke her. Because she had always assumed he would wait. That he would stay emotionally chained. That he couldn't move forward without her. But he had. And now, she couldn't follow. Checkered flag. Final lesson. Ethan stood in front of his apartment window weeks later. The city pulsed beneath him. A different woman was in his bed, a friend, maybe something more. But this time, he didn't feel dependent on her validation. He felt free. Not because he had replaced the last woman, but because he had replaced the version of himself who tolerated less than he deserved. He wasn't bitter. He wasn't broken. He had been forged, like steel under pressure. The greatest lesson Ethan learned wasn't about her. It wasn't even about women. It was about himself. That he had made a god out of her attention, a purpose out of her affection, a home out of her body. And when it all crumbled, he found something greater. His own foundation. No woman can give you that. And no woman can take it away.